Yeah. You see that they are in the habit of defending and justifying their answers. And if they do something wrong, who corrects them? The students correct. You know, they say, I agree, I disagree. They said meter squared, you know, subtract. They were doing the correcting. So that means that they're self-assessing and setting goals. If you can assess somebody else's work, you're more than likely able to assess your own. What else did you note?
I like the way that at the very end she said, yeah, you need to go back and make adjustments to your work. You have time.
Absolutely. And I would have liked to have seen her give them time to go back and make those adjustments. She's saying to them, make revisions now. She's saying, this is not a grade. This is not the final assessment. This is your chance to understand how we do this work and to strengthen the quality of your work. So she does give them a chance to revise their work. What else?
It's almost like she spent an entire class period. You know, we're watching 50-something minutes on, you know, that's how long it actually took.
Yes. It was an entire class period that she spent engaging them with calculating the area of composite figures. And who did the majority of the work? The students. They struggled with the problems. They asked each other questions. They realized that it's me that has to show the performance, not my teacher doing it for me, not me doing 50 problems that are really simple calculations, but really understanding the progression of calculating the area of composite figures. Did she restate the standard? Over and over again. She made sure they knew, here's the target, here's what you were able to do today. She was very clear about that. Did you hear the young man at the end, what he said? He got it, didn't he? He recognized that because he made a calculation error, it impacted the rest of those questions. And so he's going to focus more on calculating the area now and making sure his calculations are correct because he discovered it rather than the teacher saying, no, you calculated it wrong. You need to add one more zero. Now he's going to be more aware of it. And I think it's just a shift in the way we think. Instead of us fixing it for them, we allow them to discover the issue and see the impact of that issue so that they make more sense of it. Mm-hmm.
I love the way, because math is just a lot of simple steps, and it's just a process.
Yes.
I like the way they would probably thought, oh, when they were done with that long process, but she brought it back to the simple. It's just area of the square, and the things you already know, and she brought them back to that.
She helped them understand this math as simplistic steps, and as you already know how to do all of this. It's just that you've got to put everything you know about all the different shapes into this bigger problem. And it was very well scaffolded and very well created. Now I want you to think about, go ahead.
Yeah, she also at the end, I like how she brought them back to thinking about their learning for the day.
Yes.
Like after reviewing it, well now think about all of this. So they were thinking about their own thinking.
She brought them back to thinking about what they had learned and really analyzing their own thinking. You know, how did this process go for me as a learner? And I think that's really, really important. Think about the connections of these processes to any classroom. You can do these things in any classroom. You can make students defend their work. Think about if you're reading something, how do you know that that's the main idea? Show me. Prove it to me. You could say the exact same thing she did. So those implications go across content. And the reason I like this video as a common video is because every single thing you see it explicitly and deliberately. Now we're going to watch, when we come back from a break, we're going to watch another video and we'll see it less explicitly, but you'll still see those implications in a completely different content area. In your facilitator's guide, there are the 6 implications and then some examples from the video. This is just to nudge you and help you think about it. One of the things you notice that I do as a facilitator, when you give me a comment, what do? Restate it, and I usually paraphrase it, and I bring out the key points, and I make connections back to those 6 implications. What you need to do as a facilitator is make sure that all of the teachers you're working with are connecting what she does back to those implications. Because the important thing is that we know that these things are done in every classroom. How they are done in different classrooms may look very different, but these things are the things that lead to performance-based teaching and learning and students being able to show evidence of learning in their classroom. Does that make sense? All right, we're going to take, is 10 minutes okay with y'all? We'll take 10 minutes. We'll come back on that clock at 10:10, and we'll continue the rest of this work. Thanks so much. Okay, if y'all are ready, I am. Whoa. All right, so here's what we've done so far. We started today by building common vocabulary, and we completed the Frayer model on those 7 key terms that Forsyth County has identified as the area of focus for the next year. And then we moved from that to really looking at what are the qualities and characteristics of a standards-based, performance-based, student-centered classroom. And we saw the video, we saw the opening, the work session, and the closing, and we connected that to those 6 implications. Those 6 things that we ought to see students doing in classrooms that will support them with showing evidence of learning. And now we want to continue to make connections. And so in your handouts, you have 2 other handouts. The learner profile for Forsyth County Schools and the TAPS, which are the standards from Teacher Keys. And the reason I want to pull these back out is I want us to think about what we saw in the video and how it connects to these standards and how it connects to ultimately what we want our students in Forsyth County to look like by the time they leave our schools. And so what we're going to do is we're going to engage in a task, and I just want you to split your tables into 2. I want half of your table to look at the learner profile, and the other half of your table to look at the Teacher Keys, which are the standards from Teacher Keys. And what I want you to do is I want you to discuss one pair is going to discuss one and the other is going to discuss the other. The learner profile, I want you to look at that and highlight the qualities of those students that were developed during the lesson. For example, one of the things on your learner profile, if I can borrow this for a second, one of the things on your learner profile under thinking critically and solving problems is that students define problems and create solutions. Were they able to do that in that video? Were they creating their own solutions? She didn't do it for them. She gave them the skills that they needed to be able to say, okay, what is this problem asking of me and how will I solve it? So I want you to highlight on the learner profile the skills that were developed from that learner profile in that lesson. And then if you're doing the Teacher Keys, I want you just to focus on standards 3, 4, 5, and 6. That doesn't mean that she didn't address many more, but I want you to look at 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are the ones that are more instructional and assessment focused. And highlight where she addressed those standards in the lessons. Think about how, when she did that lesson, how did she meet those expectations in the standards? Because we want to make sure that we understand that all of this stuff that we're asked to do really is connected. They're not separate, isolated things. The Teacher Keys are the standards we're expected to meet. And when we engage kids in a standards, performance-based, student-centered classroom, we're meeting those expectations. And if we do all of those things, we're going to develop students that represent the qualities in the learner profile. So we want to make those connections right now. So I want you to take just a few minutes to do that, split your table, follow these directions, and then once you've kind of highlighted a few of those things, share your findings among your group. Questions about the task? Okay, get started. All right, I'm going to bring you back together, and I want to talk now as a facilitator about how you might facilitate this. I would suggest that if you have a timer that you could use, that might be very helpful. Because 10 minutes, you might want to allow them to spend just focusing on, making those highlights. And then 5 minutes, you do want them to have time to talk across so that the Teacher Keys group can talk to the learner profile group and debrief that. And then as a facilitator, you'll want to come back together as a whole group and debrief the connections. So let's do that last part. where we're debriefing the connections. What did you see? What kind of, reflect on teacher keys, learner profile, and those 6 implications. How are they connected?
Well, I think with teacher keys, if your students are engaged and it's focused on the students that those 6 work, then you're meeting those teacher keys, because she didn't necessarily hit everything, but she hit a lot of things.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect way to say it. If it's student-centered and you're focusing on engaging the kids in the work, you're going to hit a lot of the expectations of the teacher keys, especially if you're kind of doing that monitoring and facilitating. In this type of classroom, the teacher is much more of a facilitator than the lecturer. And there is a time for lecture, and I don't want anybody to be afraid that you can't do that. You can still do that, but we still need to, as a result of the lecture, kids need to be engaged in something to solidify the learning, to make sure that they've captured it. But it's interesting to me, those things underneath the standard on teacher keys are just indicators. You don't have to do all of them. But she's doing a lot of those things just naturally. And that's what I think we want in our classrooms, is not to try to formatively assess, but to do it naturally because it's a part of the work. In her classroom, she didn't plan her questions, did she? The questions were in response to the kids' work. That's formative assessment. And it's formative instruction. It happens right then and there. And so she's got to that point where, because it is student-centered, because they are engaged, it's just natural. And that's what we hope that will happen for teachers in their classrooms. What else did you notice? What about the learner profile? How does it connect to all of that?
Well, like again, if it's student-centered, then they're going to definitely hit all of the listening and communicating effectively.
Absolutely. So in a student-centered classroom, you're going to have kids dialoguing and discussing things. And so they're going to be required to do some of that communication work. And so as you have to develop those skills. Those students in her classroom, you can tell they do that all the time. They talk to each other all the time. They have been taught to use the language of the standard. You have to do some work to get them there, but once they get there, they begin to develop those skills.
And it was positive relationships that they had built.
Yes.
Because even when they said, we disagree, nobody was, mad or took it negatively. They just...
Absolutely. The positive relationships were built in that classroom. They were able to disagree, and it was okay. It was a risk-free environment where we recognize that mistakes are our best teaching tool. We learn from our mistakes. And I think that's a powerful thing when you've got a classroom where kids can recognize the power of their mistakes. I know that I've learned more from my mistakes than I've learned from my teachers, for sure. So, any other comments about this? So as a facilitator, the purpose of this work is to show teachers that this isn't all random stuff we're asking them to do. It's all very connected, and because of your behavior and the type of classroom you create as a teacher, you're going to meet these expectations naturally as a part of that work. So it's all very connected. So we've seen the video that everybody in Forsyth County saw. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take it down to the content specific. So each of you as a facilitator will be working with a content specific group, more than likely. Is that true? All of them will be content related. So for example, you may be working with a group of social studies teachers, or you may be working with a group of kindergarten math teachers, or a group of second grade ELA teachers. So what we wanted to do was bring all of those implications a little closer to home so that people had a little more comfort with it in their own content area. And so what we're going to do as the next task is we're going to actually see a content-specific video. We're still going to be looking for those 6 implications, so you have on the back of that handout another handout that allows them to see those 6 implications in their own content area. And so what they'll do is they're going to take notes while they're watching the video related to those 6 implications, and then after the video ends, they're going to discuss the qualities that they saw in that classroom. So these are the choices you have as content-specific videos. So we're getting close as we can. We know we haven't covered everything, but we're getting as close as we possibly can. So you start all the way at the top with high school. We've got a STEM classroom. There is an ELA classroom, and that first one is basically literary analysis, where they're really analyzing a piece of informational writing. And then the second high school ELA is they're engaged in Socratic seminars. Then you've got a high school writing classroom. You've got high school social studies, which is focused on the French Revolution. High school social studies focused on economics. There's a high school video production for those career tech classrooms. And then we move to middle school. Now, because middle school is less content specific and we saw the math, we have 3 different choices in middle school. There'll be the ELA, which is a passing notes teaching strategy, an ELA argument, and then middle school music. So if you've got a music group and they're high school, just show the middle school music one. I think it'll still be worthwhile. And then in elementary school, we've got math, and it's focused on surface area. We've got an ELA focused on theme, and a reading focused on fairy tales. Now, I recognize that not everything's there. The people who are going to be screaming, how many of you are high school? The people screaming for content specific will be high school. They're going to want it as close as they can. And you'll have a social studies teacher who teaches U.S. history who's going to say, this doesn't apply to me. You've got to really help them understand that it's the practices, not the content. It is really about those 6 implications. That's what we're looking for. So help them make those connections to their own content area. So we're actually going to watch the music one so you can get a feel for it with a different content area. But I suggest that once you know the group that you're going to be facilitating, that you choose a video that you think would be best for that group. We have watched all of these, and they do show evidence of those 6 implications in some way. So we'll watch the music one, and I want you to look for those 6 implications, and then we'll debrief that. Okay? And these links are hot. So all you have to do is click on the link and it'll take you right to it.
They're easily accessible. I mean, they fit into any school budget. Very few schools right now in our board have a full instrumental program. Because of that, you kind of have to be resourceful.
We were using boom markers. They're pretty much long tubes, different size, to make a different note sound.
The main focus of the lesson was to introduce students to the concept of notation, and prior to that, it was introducing them to the idea of duration, that element of music.
How many beats or how many pulses does that whole note get? 4. How long is that half note?
2.
Excellent, thank you.
Quarter note, 1 beat.
An eighth note, it's half of 1 beat.
So the very top one here,
It's a whole rest and it lasts the whole bar.
it would always last 4 beats, excellent. Really important to review this at the beginning of every class for maybe 5 minutes, just so the students become familiar and it becomes part of their music vocabulary. We then take one of the boom markers and we work through the beats and rhythms as a class. Feel free to do 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's on beat 4? Yes, sir. ostinatos is we want to look at the idea of combining more than one pitch. So when we looked at this one example here with the red, we're looking at one particular pitch or one voice. When you guys go to write your own compositions, you're going to be using 4 to 5 voices.
An ostinato is 1 or 2 bars that continuously repeats itself over and over again.
It's kind of a way to introduce all these different elements of music to students who maybe have no prior knowledge.
I kind of like music. I'm not a huge, I'm not into music that much. I don't go to concerts and stuff, but I like making my own music, and it's a fun experience.
The student with no prior knowledge can create something that is of the same caliber as the student who maybe has taken piano lessons for the past 5-10 years. My biggest thing for them is always compose first, or kind of create first and write second. So find something that you like, and then later try and put that down to pencil and paper.
Today we were working on how to put music from your head onto paper, and also how to mix music and try to get it all flow together.
I'm going to break you off into groups of maybe 4 students. Okay, you're each going to get 2 different pitches. Come up with a very simple 1-bar rhythm that uses 2 different pitches. Can you have them playing at the same time? All the time?
No, because then it would sound like a hot mess or something really bad.
Yes, it would. That's excellent. You're right. I think it's important for them to work in groups, and not just independently, because there's different levels of musicality within the classroom, and it's good for them to kind of feed off each other.
I like doing it in a group because you get everyone's input and different ideas, so you don't have to think of it all by yourself. And kind of gets you to practice working with people.
We usually feed off of someone else's ideas, so if you would say something, I would add on to it, and I always like that, so.
I want you to layer that sound. I want you to think sort of vertically, too, not just one voice and the next and the next.
Together and get it nice so it actually sounds good instead of just a hot mess.
I think it's really interesting. They've come up with their own 6-part ostinato, and they're breaking everything down 1 voice at a time. And again, they're using those techniques that we talked about with slowing down the rhythm to half its original speed. And then there's also that idea that they're counting out what they're playing. So they're using the beats and they're counting them out to then further make the notation, I guess, a bit easier.
We're working on the development of our ostinatos.
And we were just trying to find different pitches we could use and different sounds to make an ostinato that fits together.
You just keep playing and experiment. I think it's how they're trading off with the writing. And also, there's a bit of coaching going on. I can write it, but you need to slow it down for me, or you need to kind of work through that rhythm. So for me, that's very rewarding as a teacher, because they've actually kind of put into practice what we've been working on for the past 6 weeks. Part of that creative process here that we talked about before was after you've planned, after you've experimented, what you then want to do is you want to produce that preliminary work, and you want to revise it at some point. And there's no point right now in revising it unless you've sort of played it for people, gotten some feedback, okay, both from me and then also your peers.
I came up with my beat first, but then after we did that, I kind of started
kept playing it, and then we tried to get stuff coming into it.
Yeah, we want to get me and Colin's mix, and then Mike's didn't mix, so we tried to make the mics like go together so it sounded good.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Okay. So don't go any faster than that quarter pulse. He's got that 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the pulse you want going on in your head. Everything you're doing is correct. You're just playing a little. You speed up a little bit when you use those halves. When you go to perform something, you are probably always going to be way faster than you need to be. So if you're doing it and you find it's too fast, just stop and try it again. It's not a big deal. Okay, that's why we're doing it now as opposed to, next week. Okay, I want you guys to kind of get those jitters out. I want you to get that performance idea done so that you're not so nervous when you actually go to be marked.
For this triplet here, it used to be just a single note, but I thought that was kind of too boring, so they did a triplet.
We wanted to make it sound a little more interesting.
So what kind of a quarter you turn into it?
Yeah. I usually had just like a double note and then a single note, but I changed it into a double note since he changed it into his triple note.
Keeping those 8s, because it's a really, really good idea. Really, really good.
It's even, we're thinking of using E and a B as our thing, but when we played it, it didn't really match to the other tubes that Steven was playing, so we thought of changing it to a higher tube.
Can you show me the difference between the two?
Go ahead.
I think it was a vehicle for the students in a sense. You can tell them we're going to go and create a piece, and their interest might kind of wane a little bit, but I think if you tell them it's something that they've never experienced before, if it's something that maybe kind of has that sense of novelty to it.
Mike, you're in the corner. Can you first of all maybe tell me if you've revised anything since?
So they told me I need to go down and try and keep up with them. So yeah.
They sound good together, and we're just follow that pulse. So in the 10-week block, it can be a limited amount of time. So for the most part, I focus on the C1 and the C2 expectations from the curriculum document. So the creating and performing, and then the kind of reflective piece.
What I found was challenging was when we were writing it down and having to find the right notes and which went with the other.
And part of the curriculum asks that students become active listeners, so they listen for a specific purpose. So that was sort of in the introductory lessons, that's what we would do. We'd listen to a particular piece of music and they draw from that the bass line, or they think about the drum pattern or whatever that was.
It was easy to do with a little bit of challenge, and it was fun to do. It wasn't like, oh, it's homework and I have to do my homework and I don't want to do. And it's fun to do.
We brainstorm more as opposed to doing it by yourself and having to think of it by yourself and come up with more ideas.
I can assess them as a group, and then eventually when they play all together, like in the beginning of the term, you can assess as a large group. So I think that's important to them too, especially for those students who have
The performance of the Rostonados for a group, and during the performance they're actually evaluated by me on those elements of music that we kind of discussed earlier, so pitch and duration and tempo and that kind of thing.
So what I'd like you to do right now is debrief with your group. How did that lesson, completely different from the math lesson, how did it address those 6 implications?
Creative activity, and they were more frequent than you could do with the other.
Yeah, it was much more creative, and I think the task really was much more authentic because they were truly creating this product. In the math, it was less authentic in that, you know, the farmer's daughter sells blah, blah, blah. That was kind of a generated experience. This was a very authentic experience, which makes it a little bit more difficult to see really clearly those parts. But did the kids know their target? Were they aware of the target? And they had to transfer that target. They had to transfer their understanding of music to that piece of paper. Creating those notes and focusing on the notation was the goal of this lesson. They were working on the ostinato as a entry point to that notation. It made it easier because it was a short amount of music that they were having to notate. What else? What about feedback? Did they get feedback? Absolutely, and part of the feedback actually came when they played together. It was that immediate feedback where you say, oh, that doesn't sound right. And they described it as a hot mess. They said, oh, that's a hot mess. That doesn't sound good. So they were able to hear the feedback from the actual sound. They were able to hear feedback from their peers. And then they were able to hear feedback from the teacher. Did they make revisions to their work? Yeah, they would change based on the feedback. They would hear something, they'd make a change. They'd say, slow down so I can notate this. So yeah, they made revisions. What else?
They also justified too when they were making.
They were. Exactly. So they justified why they made the changes to the work. So it's still, those 6 implications, those practices were in this classroom, even though it was a completely different content area. It's performance-based and it's student-centered. And the kids knew their target and were very aware of how they were going to try to meet that target. And they were given just enough guidance, and yet they were left up to their own creativity to kind of make it a more fun situation for them. I noticed in both classrooms that there's a buzz with the kids. There's noise, but it's not at a level that's uncomfortable. It's at a level that really represents the kind of buzz we want in our classroom. You can't have a quiet classroom anymore. If your classroom is quiet, you're probably not doing something right. But if your classroom is not buzzing and controlled, you're not doing something right too. So I think it was a great example again. And all of these videos are great examples. I do recommend as a facilitator, once you decide and once you know what group you're going to be dealing with, choose the video you're going to use. Get to know it. Jot down your own connections to the implications so that you have something to kind of bounce off. If you get blank stares from your group, you can start making the connections or asking questions to get them to make those connections. All right, so questions about this task? Okay. So we are at a point now where we're going to try to bring some closure to the work that we've done today. So we started by building a common vocabulary. We had 7 terms that we worked together to really build consensus on so that we all had the same definition. We made connections between those terms. And then we moved into looking at the implications that performance-based teaching and learning has on student performance. And so we saw 6 things that students should be doing in classrooms on a regular basis. And then we saw that in the math video so that everybody had a common understanding of what that looked like. And then we saw it in a content-specific classroom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring some closure to all of this, and we're actually going to watch a video that I think summarizes in 2 minutes what student-centered performance-based instruction and assessment is really all about. And this is a basketball example, so it takes it again to yet another content area for us to make connections with. It's the basketball video clip.
Let's take the game of basketball. Players have to practice all week to learn how to develop new skills, such as dribbling, passing, and shooting the ball. The knowledge, reasoning, and skills of basketball become the learning targets, what basketball players should know and be able to do. Missed baskets in practice don't count against you. Practice is penalty-free. The coach works with individual players, providing them with descriptive feedback about what they need to do to improve. When you dribble a ball, keep it closer to your body. What happens when you don't? This descriptive feedback is often delivered to the whole team, sometimes verbally and sometimes written, such as sharing a diagram of a play that the team is trying to execute, breaking down the skills, modeling the skills for players, providing players individually and as a team descriptive feedback about their development of skills and play are all examples of formative instruction. Then teams play the game, the summative assessment. This is when it counts. However, because assessment is a process, players still benefit from feedback and good coaching during the game. Good coaches take every opportunity to help players improve.
So in your groups, I want you just to talk about how does that connect to everything that we've done on this district collaboration day. Just talk to each other about how that connects. The key points that were made in that video were that the first thing we have to do is we have to break down the knowledge, skills, and understandings into learning targets. Where do our learning targets come from? The standards. See, the answer is always the standards. The learning targets come directly from those standards. And the standards require performances and products from our kids. And so once we've broken down the knowledge, skills, and understandings, then we have to show them this is what it looks like. So you give them a model so that they know what to replicate. And then you let them practice and give them feedback. And that can be given to individuals, small groups, or the entire class. And the thing about all of this work is none of that is graded. When does it count? During the game. And we've got to make sure that we're always helping our kids improve and that we're not grading every single thing they turn into us. Because what that communicates is that you don't have a chance to practice and revise. Practice, revise, practice, revise. That's how we learn, is by practicing something and trying to get better at it. I played basketball, and I was good at defense. I was not that great with shooting. And so what I did is I practiced my shooting. And when I would practice shooting, my coach would give me feedback and let me practice again. And then when I got in the game, that's when it counts. Because if I shot and missed, I didn't get the points. It didn't matter during practice. It matters that my skills are developing. What matters is that my skills develop so that when we get to the game, we're going to be successful. The game is connected to what one of our vocabulary words that one of our groups did today. The game is the culminating task. The game is the performance-based assessment. The game is the end of course test. The game is the CRCT. That's the game. That's when it really counts. We've got to give our kids chances to practice, practice, practice before they play the game so that they know that they'll be successful when they get there. So what I want you to do now is I want you to think about everything we've done today. And I want you to think very intentionally about those 6 implications and how they connect to teacher keys and the learner profile. And I want you to think, what are my own personal strengths? What do I do in my classroom now that requires kids, that makes sure that they know what their targets are, that gives them good feedback, that requires them to revise their work? And what are the things that I can do right now that would help improve the quality of my instruction? You have a handout in your handout packet behind this PowerPoint slide that actually gives you a place to document your thinking. What are my strengths? What are my possible next steps? Because if we don't change anything about what we do, then the results for our kids aren't going to change. So we've got to be very intentional and deliberate about making those changes in our practice. So take a few minutes to jot those things down independently, okay? All right, I'm going to pull you back. And that is an independent reflection. Is there anybody who wants to share something you're going to do next that's just out of this world you want to tell somebody?
Well, I'm a high school math teacher, and I take the pencil out of students' hands and correct them.
Yeah. So what she said was she's a high school teacher and I take the pencil out of their hands and correct their work. I don't think there's anybody who's not guilty of that. It's such a natural thing. You want to show them, here's how to do it. And there's a place for that kind of modeling, but there's also a place for letting them discover that themselves. I think that's a great goal, and it's a natural thing. Yes?
This is kind of freeing, but I feel like I'm a parent. I worry about that I need to have a paper reflection of what we do in the class with a number on it.
Mm-hmm.
And parents want that. I feel like it's not feeling like I'm doing anything if I can show that. This is so freeing to be able to do all the things I want to do and not be sitting and grade on every little
I love it.
thing they do.
I love it. And for the video, I want to restate that. You feel free because you don't have to put a grade on every single formative activity that they engage in the classroom and have some sort of paper trail. What's really great is when you get kids to the point of self-assessing and setting goals, they can communicate where they are. And they can say, here's the work to prove it. And it doesn't have to have a number on it. They can say, I'm working on calculating the area of composite figures, and here's where I am today, and here's where I need to go the next day. That, to me, is much more powerful than a 76. What does a 76 tell us? Average. I mean, it just doesn't tell us anything but that. So we've got to, and it's going to require a shift for parents. And we're just going to have to guide them and help them understand. Progress towards the standard means hopefully by the end of the unit of study, they will be making that A. But it takes time to get to that. And we've got to show the progress rather than the numbers. And that's a big, big shift to make. But I'm glad you feel like this matches with that concept. Because it shouldn't be that we're grading everything. It should be that we're giving feedback as often as possible to individual students and to the whole team. Okay, anything else? Great reflections, and it's a good idea as a facilitator. If somebody wants to share a reflection, that's a great way to summarize this work and to hit some other key points. So I want to share with you before we wrap up our work today, there are lots of resources out there to support you with transforming and refining and revising your work. There is in It's Learning, there is a performance-based assessment course that includes videos, it includes web links, lessons and units, all of the training materials from the performance-based assessment work that's been done in Forsyth County. And if you want to get to it, the registration key is simply PBA. And it's there for you to use as a critical user and to support you as you kind of change some of the old way of thinking to this new way of thinking and support your students with being more performance-based. There will be a closing video that you will watch, and Dr. Cindy Salome and Fonda Harrison are doing doing that together, and it basically just provides you with kind of a summary of the day's work, a thank you, so that everybody understands that this is a district push. I think that's a great thing to have. I don't know if you all realize, being in Forsyth County, how lucky you are to have a district that wants to communicate this way with you. It's not like that in every district. Certainly a lot of the districts that I work with, I don't see that clear of a vision that is put out by a district. So you're very fortunate to have that. So they will close it up for you, and then you will thank everybody and say, it's been a fun time and good luck with your work. Before you go, I want to share with you some resources. And you can keep on the screen, and I'm going to move over here and tell you about the resources. The first resource that I want you to know about, of course, I showed you It's Learning, and everything you need is here. Here's the FCS August 1st District Collaboration Day, and everything you need is underneath that. Okay, and then this is under PBA? Or is this under DCD? This is under DCD. Okay, the other thing I want you to see is I want to walk you through how this handout is organized very briefly. This is your facilitator's guide. Close your eyes because I'm going to move it. And I know sometimes that makes people sick. All right, so on page 1, you basically have, this is everything that you do with the slides included on the side. This is exactly what you'll do, word for word. You'll watch the video, and of course this shows you the transcript of what's being said in the video. That way you kind of know what's there. I'm going to move it again. And then when you get to the next section, it gives you the materials you need. It tells you kind of the what to say if you forget or if you need some guidance. You don't have to read this. Please don't read it. That would be a drag. But this supports you if you kind of are like, what was I supposed to say here? This will give you some information. And then it tells you the task and gives you some hints. And then tells you how to reflect on the task and some of the key points to make. Okay? And then it tells you again, then you move to the next thing and everything you need. So everything's right here if you need it, and it's there for you to use. It's I can't remember how many pages it is. It looks like it's 7 pages, and it just kind of supports you with the work. The other thing I want you to see is in the PowerPoint, you will also see under each slide, it gives you some directions in case you need it. It's just there to support you as you're facilitating this work. Okay, so those are the resources that you have. And if you have any other questions that you want to ask, one thing I want to make you aware of is we've been in here for 2.5 hours, and we've done the majority of the tasks. We went a little bit quicker than you'll go, but we also didn't watch 2 of the videos. So more than likely, you're not going to be 3 hours solid. We took a 10-minute break. So that gives you time to do good debriefing. It gives you time to have conversations, and it makes you feel like you're not rushed. So I hope that's helpful to you. Are there any questions, things that I can answer for you before you are set off on your way? That's a... Yeah.
And so they should have everything at the school. You may want to walk back and say, do you have all of these ready? Because they all received them the week before the February 14th training. So they are all still at school somewhere, and they've gotten numerous emails from the NC telling them if you need any materials, please contact us on a certain date. They should have everything there. I'm in the process of putting all of you that are sitting here today into the group, so that you can access it and get all the materials that have been shown.
Does the materials include copies, or will we have to bring copies?
The materials included copies.
The copies are, yeah.
As many as was requested by group at each particular school.
To the host side, the schools that are hosting the groups. So it might not belong to every single school, the schools that have the groups that are meeting their own. And what we asked them to do is to make sure that they had Post-its and highlighters and chart paper on hand, and if they didn't, to let us know and we make sure we had it there for the file.
What other questions?
And most of the schools have been very willing to say, if we're short on copies, we'll make the copies, and if we don't have the workshop materials, we'll just provide them because schools have that kind
Yeah, probably so. It would be helpful, you know, just make some sort of contact so you know what when you pull up that day, you know it's going to be there, because that's a iffy situation. You don't want to walk into not having your materials. Any other questions?
May I make one more quick announcement too? I'm really hoping that this is for those who view as well, and as a refresher, keep in mind that you'll also have your new teachers, all of the new teachers. One of the benefits of the snow, even though it was a difficult thing to go through and experience and reschedule everything that we've done, a great benefit is that every single staff member gets to start on this same page on August the 1st. So I just encourage you to remember that you'll have your veteran teachers returning and you'll have your new teachers. So you may even want to start your session that morning by making sure that they know each other, and then allowing them to invite and embrace those new folks into the work and make them feel a part of it. So it's a great opportunity for us to truly get everybody on the same page.
And just as you have flexibility in your classroom, we've given you kind of the curriculum and the lesson plan. But, you know, if you want to do an icebreaker at the beginning, if you want to shift some of the way the activities are, how they engage in it, that's fine. The key is that the content is the same, that we're hitting the same mark, that those learning targets, we hit those 6 implications. We make connections with all of those key terms, that we make sure that we make connections to the learner profile and teacher keys. Those are the things we want to dig in and make sure everybody has the same common understanding. I can tell you right now, if every teacher in Forsyth County teaches and engages kids with those 6 implications, we're going to see powerful things. If you've got kids who are doing those 6 things, I think you're going to see good results for your kids. Very good results. Other questions or comments? Mm-hmm.
Is this kind of informational in our district? Are we sharing this with parents? Or how are we? Or
We are going to try to send something in the communicator that goes out either, and then at the beginning of the year, they have that send back to school, state of the school. We'll try to address it in that as well. I'll probably infer information about it when I do my assessment write-up, because it's not about assessment. It's all about the journey on the way, and the journey on the way has to be about performance-based instruction. So I will make sure that in my assessment meeting, there's information about that. Teachers will be doing
are we looking at connections with this in the report card? Like how all this?
And I think you make a critical point, that this has to be something that we communicate as we go through the process. So one thing that I do recommend that you do as you begin to do this work in your classrooms, and you should talk to the group that you're dealing with, is get kids more involved in the communication with the parent. Because if I had a child that was able to talk to me about their work the way some of these kids talked about it in these videos, I'd feel like something was happening in school, even if I didn't get a letter or a number. So we've got to help make that transition for parents. It's not easy, because parents want to see the grade point average, the numbers, and this is going to get my child into college. So we've got to help make that transition, and communication is a huge part of that, absolutely.
And a lot of it is what you said earlier about communicating to parents from the teacher's perspective. It's not all about every single grade we give a child. It's about their growth and understanding of the content. And if they can discuss it, not just talk about it, but get into it, understand it, and discuss it. And you'll see results in the long term. It doesn't happen overnight. Just like that video that you watched, that didn't happen overnight. That wasn't the first class that she had had. Everything that you talked about, the safety and the security the students felt, and the way they were responding, that was learned, and it was modeled, and it took time. It didn't happen in 1 week.
Other questions? Well, have a good summer, and good luck to you when you do this. I look forward to hearing your results. I'll be back in in Forsyth County next year, and look forward to seeing all the things that happen as a result of this work. Thanks so much for your time and for being a part of the video.